Alright everyone, it's time for the first video of the day talking about something that I've noticed within the Biden administration over the last couple of weeks, which is that they've pivoted completely in messaging, and usually when an administration does that, it's like when the Obama administration decided to do this multiple times, for instance, on gun control, notably after Sandy Hook. When the messaging began to either do a 180 or change subjects, you knew that was a tacit admission that the administration had failed. Trump did this. Trump initially was talking a great deal about wanting to get an Israeli-Palestinian peace deal going. After a few months realized it was going to take years to even set the groundwork there, and immediately pivoted to Korea, where he had much more success. Now, first and foremost down below, if you're watching this video on YouTube, there will be a pinned comment with links to 4 other video hosting sites that I use. Keep in mind I make 4 videos a day, 2 of them go on YouTube for mainly algorithmic purposes, as well as to punish them for their constant censorship and abuse of content creators. Do you really think that the Biden administration really wants crime and the border to be 2 of the major issues that are being spoken of? I hazard a guess no. The problem is that the Democrats already lost on these issues. The American people understand that there's a significant border crisis, and the initial attempt by Psaki mainly to cast it off as, well, Trump caused a crisis and now we have to fix it, that didn't work. The messaging didn't work, which is why they put that issue on the back burner and why Kamala refused to really even comment on the border. She was very uncomfortable when even asked about it. Biden literally wouldn't even take questions about the border. That's for a reason. For several months it was frozen out of the public discussion by the Biden administration and therefore by the legacy media that all the soccer moms watch, because they didn't want to talk about it. The crisis was something that they had lost on. People understood. Trump did not cause the problem. On crime, the Democrats right now are attempting vainly to say, well, the Republicans are soft on crime, look at the Capitol insurrection stuff. Everyone remembers that for the better part of a year, the Democratic Party at all levels cheered on riots in the United States. They cheered on the George Floyd, the Fentanyl Floyd riots, the Jacob Blake riots. They cheered on what happened in Kenosha, except for Rittenhouse. He was the one person who ever engaged in any form of violence that they attended to these situations that they didn't like, and that's because he acted in self-defense, and I think that'll be found by the way. You've got a situation where the Democratic Party, through attempting to defund the police, through literally abusing the police in some cases, telling them to stand down, ignoring riots, ignoring protests that became riots as well, ignoring massive amounts of property damages, it resulted in dozens of deaths and billions of dollars in damages. The people of the United States remember that. So talking about the fact that crime rose over the same attendant period that race riots were happening, that's a big L for the Democrats. It's not an issue on which they've won. They've consistently, in basically all polling, even the push polling firms can't make it look like the Democrats have the high ground on this particular issue. So when they start talking about the need to address crime, saying, well, any leftover funds from COVID relief, you should give it to the police. Now I'm thinking to myself, isn't this a 180 from Joe Biden 6 months ago? Number one. And number two, why do you think he's willing to even discuss the issue? It's because the infrastructure deal fell through. If there's a deal reached and it finally goes through, it looks like it might pass the Senate this time, it's because the Republicans got most of what they wanted. Because otherwise there would be no infrastructure deal. The left is going to cry goddamn bloody murder. They'll balk. Some of them might not even fucking vote for it, because at the end of the day they'll say, well, this is capitulation. It's going to make Biden look terrible. He doesn't want people talking about it. It's funny because this was a big thing. Infrastructure this, human infrastructure that, and all the sloganeering and newspeak that he used. This was a big thing and it failed, and he shelved it, and then he had to get the Mitt Romneys of the GOP aboard to have any hope of passing it. That failed. Certainly on jobs. He doesn't want to talk about that. For 2 months in a row, you had less than expected job creation. The first month there, in April, unemployment managed to tick up. He can't talk about the economy. Inflation's at 5%, probably still rising at the moment. I can't wait to see June's numbers. Even if it goes down some, a considerable amount of wealth has been diluted and pissed away over just the course of a quarter of a year. Joe Biden has managed to undo much of the progress economically that happened in the prior 4 years. And of course, the reason for a lot of these problems, really, it's not even technically, it's not Biden. It's COVID lockdownism. That's what harmed the economy. It wasn't Trump, it wasn't Biden. It was blue state governors, by and large. It was paranoia. Unfortunately, it's going to take years to make up for that, to compensate. But Biden is not the person who's going to give you those years. So he can't talk about that. He can't talk about the infrastructure bill that, if it's passed through at all, will be half a Republican bill. He can't really take credit for that. The left is going to chew him up and spit him out. He can't talk about his diplomatic chops. Was he going to talk about, oh yeah, by the way, I got rid of the sanctions on Nord Stream 2. I'm tough on Russia. He can't talk about him facing down Putin. That lasted for less than 15 minutes of shame. And then the legacy media let it go, probably because the White House asked them to, because it made him look like a doofus. And he's constantly making gaffes and saying weird shit, making mistakes every time he goes off script. He's got nothing positive to talk about. The problem is that overall, over the last few months of the asterisk administration's first half of the first term, what's happened, and it'll be the only term really, for the first quarter of the first term, over that period of time, there's not been a single victory. Crime has gone up. Unemployment is still at the same level, roughly, and it ticked down last month after ticking up the month before, and somehow this was considered a great victory. You've got high inflation, you've got high unemployment, you've got rising crime, and it's still rising, by the way, at the moment, so, I mean, you can't blame Trump for policies at this point. He's no longer in office. You've got diplomatic tensions. You've got Afghanistan. He was talking a big deal about that, too. Oh, well, man, yeah. He was hoping that it would go well so that he could take credit. That's why he pushed the date back to the very symbolic September 11th, so that he could dovetail that with very patriotic celebrations and say, hey, I finally ended Bush's war. That's basically what he wanted to do. Instead, the Taliban has advanced further every single day since he announced the withdrawal would be pushed back, which was predictable, but he's too stupid to realize that. And now it looks like Afghanistan will be hazarded the second we're gone, to the point where they're slowing down the troop withdrawal. I'm now skeptical of whether he's actually going to stay with the date. He might push it back again. Either way, by the way, he'll blame it on Trump, but again, the optics won't work. People are not going to blame Trump for Joe Biden pushing the date back and not knowing what he's doing. To be clear, he'll take attrition from that, so will the Democrats. The same is for supporting rioting. The same is for being poor on the economy, and the same is bumbling through everything else. What positivity is there for Biden to talk about when you literally bring the cameras to the border by having Kamala Harris go to one of the more defended parts of the border, by the way, which is the El Paso region, which is why there's no border crisis there at the same level as there is in the Rio Grande Valley, parts of California, Arizona, certainly. When you do that, when you put the focus on an issue you've already technically lost on, it's just an admission that you lost on it less than for all of the other issues you'd been talking about. When you talk about, when he pivots back to being tough on crime 1994 Bill Biden, as opposed to pandering fake progressive Biden who wants to let everyone out of prison and free the prisoners and let people in and so forth, isn't that a tacit admission of the dysfunction of your administration? I can only imagine what would happen if Trump had done this more than a few times. Even every administration does this, but again, normally, like with Israel-Palestine peace deal under Trump, he pivoted away from it because, of course, the initial efforts fell through. But that wasn't like a pressing major issue for anybody. Really, that was already a back burner issue that he pivoted away from. He arguably spread the net too wide. On Obamacare, arguably you could say that, because, of course, Trump attempted to repeal and replace 3 different times. Through Rand Paul, through Cruz, and I can't remember who had the third proposal, Paul Ryan or some shit. Or was he out by then? A lot of the rhino-cons run together, so it could be difficult. I think McConnell was involved with all of them. The problem is it didn't work, so he made do with repealing the ACA mandate, which was really the only major part of it that people had a huge problem with, and left it at that. Then he immediately pivoted off to the border, and then spent years fighting for that, finally got it, belatedly, but better late than never. But Biden never got a success. At least Trump early on in the first year could already crow about VA reform, tax reform, and the elimination of the ACA mandate. He had 3 major victories already in the first year. Biden, so far, halfway through that first year, has 0. If anything, he has multiple major losses. Afghanistan will blow up in his face. Inflation could literally cause a recession at any given time. The economy's on shaky ground. This is Biden's America. That's about all. Peace out.